Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. We are now less than 24 hours away from the Steelers' Week 14 matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens, and this is a big one because it decides who takes sole possession of first place in the AFC North with just 4 games left to go in this season. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers' best chance of making the postseason this year is if they win the division. So this divisional matchup against the arch rivals is as big as they come. We're going to be going live for this game tomorrow, guys, on the channel for the largest Steelers watch parties anywhere here on YouTube, right here on Steelers Talk. It all starts at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Me and Ponzi will be in the studio for a full hour pregame show, live play-by-play and analysis during the game itself, and then we've got extensive postgame reaction coverage as well. Today, I want to talk about some practice squad elevations for the Pittsburgh Steelers that they announced this afternoon. Then I want to talk about an interesting dynamic that is developing in the Steelers wide receiver room this week and why the passing attack for the Steelers this week might look completely different than what it's looked like all season long with some new additions in that room. And then we'll talk about an Adam Schefter report from earlier today that the Steelers have until March 1st to pick up the 2027 team option on Mike Tomlin's current contract. I'm going to give my take as to what Mike Tomlin and the Steelers need to do for the Steelers to even consider picking up that option at the end of the year. So again, make sure you click that subscribe button if you guys want extensive Steelers coverage here on the channel for free. And let's just dive right into our topics today, starting with some practice squad elevations for the Pittsburgh Steelers as the Steelers elevated Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a wide receiver, of course, played multiple years with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, speedster, deep threat. He is going to be elevated to the game day roster for this week's game, as well as offensive tackle Dylan Cook. He will be the swing tackle tomorrow with Calvin Anderson and Broderick Jones both out. Of course, Andrus Peat will get the start at left tackle just like he had last week, so keep that in mind. But I bring up MVS specifically because I want to talk about a very interesting dynamic that is developing before this football game between the Steelers and Ravens tomorrow, which is that the Steelers' passing attack might look a lot different tomorrow. All right, Adam Thielen, we don't know yet if he's going to get a helmet or not. He did travel with the team today, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play for sure, or that he's going to start, or that he's going to get a heavy workload. Asante Samuel Jr. traveled to Chicago a couple weeks ago, obviously did not play in that ball game. So we'll see if Thielen is ramped up enough to be able to play, but we have seen, this team in the Pittsburgh Steelers ramp guys up in a short time frame. They did it with Kyle Duggar when they traded for him closer to the trade deadline. And, the Steelers have been interested in Adam Thielen for a very long time. They were interested in him last year at the trade deadline. I think they were probably interested in him even when Carolina was shopping him earlier this year. Of course, the Vikings ended up landing him, but I think the Steelers were probably interested in him then as well. Like, this is somebody that they've had their eye on for a while, and obviously these 5 games, especially these games against Baltimore, are going to determine what happens the rest of the season if this team can make the postseason. So if Thielen can theoretically play tomorrow, I think he will play tomorrow, and I think that he will play a rather heavy workload. In fact, I think I'm going to bet an anytime touchdown on Adam Thielen tomorrow. I think he's going to have a decent workload tomorrow, but we'll see if he even gets a helmet. But we know for sure MVS will be getting a helmet. He was elevated from the practice squad. There's no real reason to do that unless you plan on playing them. Now, how big is MVS's role going to be? I guess we'll see, but they're not bringing it up from the practice squad for no reason. All right, I would say the reason why they're bringing him up and the reason why that they brought in Adam Thielen on waivers this week is because they wanted more size and they wanted more physicality in the Steelers wide receiver room, specifically when running specific downfield concepts like corner routes, sails, slants, stuff of that nature, where sometimes you got to get a little physical with the DB or with a linebacker or whatever. And, Thielen and MVS are bigger guys that are more capable of playing that kind of ball as opposed to the smaller wide receivers in Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson. Now, I don't think Roman and Calvin are necessarily bad players. I want to make that abundantly clear. Calvin, shifty route runner, has some disgusting routes on film. He's got better hands than people give him credit for. But he's just so small and so tiny, and he just doesn't have a lot of functional strength. So when DBs get their hands on him and they try to be physical, there's nothing Calvin can really do, and he gets shut down. And it really limits limits his impact on the football game, which is exactly why I think they're bringing in Adam Thielen, because that's one of the things that he does at a really high level, and theoretically, we'll see if Thielen has anything left in the tank here. There's obviously probably a reason Minnesota wasn't playing Thielen over guys like Jalen Naylor, for example. There's probably a reason for that, and that reason is probably that Adam continues, that decline physically now that he's 35 years old. But just from a pure skill set profile perspective, Thielen, he's got quick feet, he's got really savvy route runner, and he knows how to set guys up one-on-one. He can be physical in his routes down the field on those corner routes, etc. And he's theoretically got strong hands. Now, Thielen's had some drops this year in Minnesota, which are uncharacteristic of him. But, just from a pure skill set perspective, Thielen is the short and intermediate, route runner and separator that this team has really missed this entire season, because you don't have the physicality in the smaller guys in Calvin Austin and Roman. You do have the speed there, but you don't have the physicality or necessarily the 50-50 ball ability. And, Thielen can theoretically give Aaron Rodgers a safety blanket, because that's exactly what Thielen was in Carolina these last 2 years for Bryce Young. Third down, fourth down, you need to get a completion. If you're not going to play Pat Freiermuth, especially, you need somebody out there that can sit down in zones, is a really smart player, can set guys up with his routes, makes tough catches outside of his frame. And Thielen has, for the better part of his career, for most of his career, he's been able to do that. So hopefully he can be that type of player for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch here, and hopefully it starts tomorrow. But also MVS is a bigger, speed threat. Calvin and Roman are smaller deep threats that might be a little bit more shifty. I don't think they have bad hands for smaller guys, but they just can't be as physical. The thing about Marquez is that, he doesn't really run great routes to the short and intermediate levels of the field. He's more of like a straight line athlete than like a shifty athlete. So he can only run certain kinds of routes on certain kinds of concepts. But, when you run, a deep corner, a deep flag, you run, a go ball, you run a post, you run a deep cross. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, has got the size and the speed combination that you want in a guy running those kinds of routes. And, he could maybe give this team a better, opportunity to hit on some of these downfield opportunities that they have just not been able to hit to guys like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. Now, I would say the quarterback play has honestly played a big part in the fact that the Steelers haven't been able to throw the ball down the field. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't really thrown the ball accurately, honestly, all season long, especially deep down the field, 20-plus yards down the field. It's been kind of a disaster for Aaron Rodgers this year, to be quite frank with you. He's been okay to the 10-plus to 20 yards, air yards, area of the field, specifically when he sees a certain look. But he doesn't throw it, 10-plus yards down the field all that often. And, when he goes beyond 20-plus air yards, that's really when the accuracy really falls off for Aaron Rodgers. So hopefully Rodgers, feels a little bit more comfortable with a guy like Thielen, a bigger slot kind of guy, who's got quick feet, he's got good hands, he's got, tons of experience running routes, knows how to set guys up. He's got great footwork, good physicality. Like, hopefully that type of receiver can open some things up underneath and in the intermediate, which could hopefully get some safety attention off of DK Metcalf in these really weighty downs when we would love to get the ball to DK Metcalf, right? So I think the best way to describe DK, guys, is that he's a 1A receiver. I don't think he's like a true number one, because in my opinion, like a true number one can get double teamed and still beat a double team. Okay. Like Jamar Chase can do that. Justin Jefferson can do that. Jackson Smith and Jigba can do that. There's the top guys in the league can do that kind of stuff. But with DK, I'm not sure if he's the type of guy that if he gets bracketed, you're throwing it up to him, no matter what, or that he's going to win on a route, no matter what. I think DK is the kind of guy where if you've got a really good Robin, on the other side of him, somebody that, can take the attention from the safeties on the other sideline there, he can get open a lot. And, if you put one-on-one coverage on DK Metcalf, there's a lot of things that he can do. If you play zone coverage against the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's a lot of stuff DK can do. But unfortunately, the Steelers are seeing a lot of man coverage, and they're seeing a lot of double coverage on DK, and they haven't really been able to get the ball downfield to any of their other weapons. So, hopefully Adam Thielen and MVS can help maybe unlock that, because, I don't think Thielen and MVS are necessarily going to come in here and just take the jobs of Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin III. Don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think that, specific guys are going to be in on certain concepts, and they're going to have specific roles within those concepts, and they're going to be interchanged based on what concept they're running, right? It's going to be more of a true rotation, where DK, of course, he's the one making the money. He's going to be out there for pretty much every single play, and of course they're going to continue to run their heavy personnel, their multiple tight end looks. They still like their tight ends, but when they do go to those 11 personnel, when they do spread things out a little bit, they're going to have specific concepts, and they're going to have specific guys that they want in certain roles on those concepts. So I think that, depending on which concepts they do bring out is going to, kind of determine who's out there more. On certain concepts, Roman's going to play more, and Calvin. On other concepts, you're going to want some more physicality. You're going to want Thielen and MVS out there along with DK. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the dynamic looks like in this wide receiver room tomorrow. Whether Thielen even plays. We'll see if he's ramped up enough. But, no matter what, you're going to have a different element injected into this rotation in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And I'm really intrigued and really juiced to see what that looks like, and to see if that, sparks Aaron Rodgers a little bit, man. And hopefully he can get back to playing some good football, because in the first 7 weeks of the season, the first 6 games, he was playing like borderline top 10 level football. We know it's in there, but later in the season, can he really get that back? That's going to be a big X factor to whether or not the Steelers can A, win the division, and B, win a playoff game. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers do in the passing game tomorrow. But now, shifting gears here to Mike Tomlin, we did get a report from Adam Schefter from ESPN today saying that Mike Tomlin has a club option, a team option in 2027 on his current contract. So this offseason, by March 1st, the Pittsburgh Steelers need to make a decision on that, whether to pick that up and to lock him in for the 2027 season, or to decline it and pretty much make him a lame duck head coach, where he's going into a season where this is his final season under contract, and he's really fighting for a contract next year. Now, there's multiple interesting storylines when it comes to this report. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what this team needs to do for the Steelers to feel good about picking up that option. In my opinion, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers need to win at least one playoff game too. That's where the discussion starts. All right, if you don't make the playoffs, if you don't win a playoff game, that's a long time going without a playoff win, and that's a lot of years in a row where you've brought in veteran players to try and alleviate the problem and to try and get this team over the hump, and it hasn't worked. So if you are not winning a playoff game this year, you don't pick up the option. Now, I think it would be kind of hard not to if you do win a playoff game, because obviously that means that the Steelers would be turning around their season if they end up winning a playoff game this year. So if Tomlin is able to find a way to do that, then that's when the discussion begins for me for picking up that 2027 club option for Mike Tomlin. But I think, as we sit here today, I think we can all agree that, the most likely scenario is that the Steelers will not win a playoff game this season. And if that happens, I just don't see any way that you can, accept, this club option. And that would mean Mike Tomlin would be a lame duck head coach for 2026. Now, there's 2 ways to look at that. All right, number one, Tomlin feels insulted and he wants to be traded away, and he doesn't want to coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers without the club, picking up that 2027 option. That's very possible, and if that's the case, the two sides may agree to part ways, and they may agree to find a trade partner for Mike Tomlin that he feels good about, which, in my opinion, would probably be the New York Giants, okay? And there's a lot of possibilities that we've talked about on the channel with that. You could do a first-round pick swap, move up to take a quarterback, either Dante Moore or Fernando Mendoza at the top of the draft. Honestly, it's looking like Ty Simpson right now. I mean, watching the SEC championship game, not sure you want to pick him that high. So maybe Mendoza or Moore if you have a top 2 draft pick. That's certainly a possibility. But another possibility is Tomlin, accepts the challenge of a lame duck, 2026 season. Which would be, pretty much 2 decades here in Pittsburgh at that point, his 20th season. And it would be Cam Hayward's final season here in Pittsburgh as well. Cam has said that this is going to be his final contract of his career. And of course, he just has 1 year left. So, it would be the last year of Cam Hayward. It'd be the last year of Mike Tomlin. And, what you could kind of frame it as is this is going to be Tomlin and Hayward's last push. All right. They're going to try and do it this year. Getting another veteran quarterback. I know, fans don't want that, but, you have to at least acknowledge it as a possibility at this point. Where they essentially say to Tomlin, you got this one last chance, one last season on your contract to, get not only into the playoffs, but to win in the playoffs, show us that we should give you another contract in the 2027 offseason. And I could see either one of those, scenarios playing out for the Steelers head coach. So, I really think that the pressure's on Mike Tomlin right now because I think if they don't win a playoff game this year, the Steelers are not going to be accepting that 2027 club option, or at least I hope they don't if the Steelers don't win a playoff game this year. And then it's going to be interesting to see if that option does not get picked up. What does Mike Tomlin decide to do? Is he okay with being a lame duck head coach 20 years into his tenure as the longest tenured head coach in professional sports? Or would he rather be traded away if that's going to be the case? It's going to be a really interesting offseason, guys. It's going to be a really interesting end to this season as well. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we have you guys covered with the very latest when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers on this channel. There's a reason why we have over 105,000 subscribers here on the channel. We're the only individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube with over 100,000 subscribers. And tomorrow, my goal is to get to 107,000 subscribers here on the channel. So if you haven't already, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Join us for our live watch party tomorrow for Steelers versus Ravens. It all starts at 12 p.m. Eastern time, where of course we got an hour pregame, then we got live play-by-play and analysis, and then we've got extensive post-game coverage. The complete game day experience for Steelers fans can be found right here on Steelers Talks. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Until tomorrow, guys, here we go, Steelers.